Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Distracted Spectrum. We're here with Professor Howard Williams, also known as Archaeologist, the professor of the underworld. And today we're taking one of the most popular games in recent times, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the game of Vikings, and we are giving him some imagery and some historical context and having him kind of blind react to a lot of this. I sent him a document last night, and he has definitely not had time to dive into the lore of Assassin's Creed. He is the professor of archaeology at the University of Chester in Wales. You might know that area from Welcome to Wrexham, but that is where he is a professor of, and he specializes in Adrian's Wall and Viking time period. So, Professor Howard Williams, welcome back
Hello.
to the show. I think this is trip number 4.
It might be. That's true.
It might
Nice to be
be.
here anyway.
Yeah.
And I have to quite correct you because everyone in Chester will get angry. My office is 1.4 kilometres from the Welsh border. So Wales is officially west of us. I live in Wales, but I work in Chester. But yeah, it's a border town. It's a border city that goes back deep in time. So the Welsh claim it. And they call it Caia, obviously after its Roman name, meaning fortified site, because it was the legionary fortress of the 20th Legion Valyria Victrix for most of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries. Anyway, sorry, hello.
Hello. Hello, hello. Okay, so before I describe the game, when did the Vikings emerge? Like,
Okay,
Rome falls and you
yeah.
have kind of the world trying to put the pieces back together, if you will.
Yeah.
So where does the Vikings kind of emerge? The Picts are in, or, they're there. There's so many people groups, and so where do they kind of start to emerge?
Okay, so from a Western European perspective, Scandinavia has always been part of the trade systems, the exchange of mercenaries, slave trading routes, diplomatic exchanges throughout the time of the Roman Empire from the 1st to the 5th centuries. We know that the breakup of the Western Roman Empire has a shockwave effect on those relationships and multiple waves of impact on the economy and society of southern Scandinavia in the 5th, 6th centuries. And out of that, and out of the then subsequent climatic and environmental catastrophes of the early 6th century, we see the emergence of new societies in southern Scandinavia that form the building blocks of the Viking Age. So the Viking Age is many stages removed from the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire is still there and going strong for another 700, 800 years to 1453. But in terms of the Western Empire, the barbarian successor states, as we call them, the Franks and the Visigoths and the various British and Anglo-Saxon kingdoms in the island of Britain have adopted Christianity, developed their own complex trading systems, stratified societies. They've been going strong through the 7th and 8th centuries, and nearing the end of the 8th centuries, we see a real massive uptick in Scandinavian raiding. Firstly, targeting soft targets of monasteries, and a couple of generations later, organizing larger armies to overwinter and to systematically plunder and almost do a kind of parasitic kingdom takeover, for a kingdom sort of trying to sponge as much resources they can off these Christian kingdoms, and then subsequently either settling or in some cases taking over those kingdoms. So we see this kind of real multiple stages of Scandinavian intervention from the late 8th century through to the late 9th century, when Vikings Valhalla is picking up the narrative. And
Yeah.
so the height of it is the Great Heathen Army, which manages to knock out all of the
Yep.
Anglo-Saxon kingdoms bar one. And when it's not destroying things on this side of the channel, this is as in my side, they're over in Francia
Yeah, yeah.
causing trouble for the Frankish Empire, who is obviously much bigger, more powerful, more wealthier, and the political and military dynamic is completely different. But they are still making a lot of trouble for a lot of people along the coast and the major river courses, where they are systematically extracting by intimidation and raiding. And these raids, when we talk about raids, we're moving from small raids of 1 to 3 boats, in and out, grab what you can, through to systematic, almost like town-sized settlements installing
Yeah, yeah.
themselves at strategic locations on rivers and then basically sucking up all the wealth and the people of those regions by the late ninth century. So if you want to be really critical of the Viking phenomenon, you can see it as moving from a minor sniffle in the late 8th century from a political point of view. So I feel a bit down to a full-on late-stage cancer in the late ninth century in terms of the effects it's having on the health of the political economies, if you like. And then, of course, there's a longer story of the 10th century and the early 11th century, which is also seen as part of the Viking Age,
Hmm.
where we see entire policies of either Scandinavian or most often hybrid states,
Hmm.
Christian states forming around the North Sea and the Irish Sea world, including parts of Ireland, the Western Isles of Scotland, the Orkney and Caithness and Sutherland, and so on, as well as the Danelaw in eastern England. So it's difficult to synopsize the entire Viking Age of three centuries or so into a short
Video game.
story, but the point you've got to get across to listeners is there was no single group called Vikings. There was no single kind of Viking behavior. There was a lot of interaction and hybridity, and the whole concept of the Viking Age is a bit of an old-fashioned, weird idea. But it's describing a whole raft of different processes: political, economic, military, social, and religious. By the end of the Viking Age, Scandinavia is largely converted to Christianity. It's a two-way interaction. So it's not all about Scandinavians doing stuff outside of Scandinavia. It's the backwash of influence and society change going on in Scandinavia with the burgeoning forms of kingdoms. So Norway, Denmark, and Sweden are still in their incipient stages, but are concepts and kingdoms by the year 1000 that hadn't really been there in any coherent form and sustainable form in earlier centuries. And partly that's due to the mimicking the political structures of the continent and adopting Christianity as a state religion, allowing them to create that economic and political structure that,
Alliances and
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So trying to get anyone trying to tell the story of the Viking Age is going to have trouble. And of course, for popular audiences, TV shows, video games, fictional books, comics, there's so much media out there trying to give you a sort of sense of it. And many of them are, even if they're quite fantastical, they do serve as very useful introductions for people who might not have read up on the history or archaeology.
Yeah, and a lot of what you just described is in the game. The character you play, his name is Avar, or you can also make it a girl, and it's Avar as well. Uh, but you are kind of the you were kind of the orchestrator of the Great Heathen Army. You were the one. You live in Ravensthorpe, which is still a place, right? Is that how you say it?
Ravensthorpe, yeah.
Ravensthorpe, yeah. So that you are the founder of that village and you kind of go from place to place raiding, and then you help these little kingdoms making alliances. You see Vikings turning into Christians, you see Christians turning into Vikings. You see this kind of intermingling and going back and forth of cultures. But the point is you're building these alliances to take over the British Isles, basically. The Great Heathen Army is what the game builds up to. But you're
Fantastic.
also, at the same time, you are interacting with you're doing like ayahuasca stuff basically. I don't know what it really would be in that time. I know it wouldn't be ayahuasca, but you're doing these hallucinates that takes you to Asgard, where you're interacting with Thor and you're fighting these battles. Loki's there. Loki's throughout the whole game. He's a character that's hidden in the game and you don't find out to the end. But the premise, how the game starts, really, you are in an amulus. So they found a Viking grave, yeah, what's presumed to be Canada. And they extract DNA from these bones. They put it in through this machine. It recreates the memory sequence. And then, like Avatar, you jump into the machine and you become this person through living out their consciousness. So you're reliving all of their memories, and your consciousness is synced. Like their decisions are your decisions. You think the same, you feel the same. They die, you die. That kind of thing. And so at the same
Matrix,
time,
but with
yeah, like the
bigger weapons.
Matrix. It was, yes. And at the same time during the game, you're taking out a secret order that's kind of controlling the world, the 1%, if you will. You're playing a little bit of a Luigi character, and you're collecting and destroying this like secret order that's trying to control the world. And so there's multiple little things going on in this, but let's start with just image one that I sent you. First, the time frame, it starts in 873, and I think it goes to around 920. So we're kind of in the prime of the Viking Age, almost to the end, because it's not a very long time period. It's about as old as America. It's about how long it lasted, I guess. But the first one is the funeral. So
That's
in
how
the
long
game,
America's going to last, Jono.
God, feels like it.
If you want to go by that, you've got about 40 years left. I'll give you 40 years. I shouldn't joke. Yes.
If we're
Sorry, I've made it all really dark now.
Oh no, it's true though. I mean, nothing looks good out there. I
No.
mean, I can literally hear jets flying over my head at the moment. F-16s, they're just ripping by. So, but image one is a Viking funeral, and
Okay.
so they depict them putting them out on a boat, setting the boat on fire, and the boat
Yeah.
will sink, and they go to the bottom of the water.
Do they actually set this on fire? Do they? Because they've got flame
Yes.
fire in it, but they
No,
do
they
what?
arrow it. They arrow
They do
it.
the flaming arrows. Okay,
Yes.
this is all nonsense, obviously, but it's fun.
Okay.
So, I
So
mean, what? Yeah, go on.
with that, I mean, the other way they do it is there's a king who dies, a Viking king, Viking ruler, clan ruler, whatever. They put him on a wood platform and they surround him with all of these gifts that other Viking clans or whatever, had brought them, and they burn him on top of a hilltop so that everybody can kind of see the spectacle of it.
Yeah, that's more like
So
it. Yeah.
So that one is more like it. So
Yeah, yeah,
what was a Viking? I mean, this is why I
yeah,
made
yeah,
it number one. This is
yeah.
your cup of tea right here.
Yes, I mean, there's an incredible variety in the ways of disposing of the dead, both before Christian conversion, but during the Christian conversion period, a lot of different ideas. By the end of the Viking Age, in different parts of the world, people are starting to be buried in field cemeteries near churches or in churches, but people are probably still being buried in the landscape near their farms for most of the
Mhm.
Viking Age. So we have a lot of different options, a lot of different localized beliefs and practices. Most of the choices are probably less religiously motivated and more family or kinship motivated,
Or
whether
just
you're
practical. It's not.
whether you die on a raid, whether you die after a particularly bad stomach infection, sort of a norovirus or whatever happens to you, there may be a variety of different rules. But this trope we see again and again, almost these video shows, everyone knows that we don't know that and everyone knows this is a Hollywood Viking funeral, but they just cannot not put it in. They have to put it in because our culture expects to see people being pushed out onto the water from, as in Einar in the 1958 film The Vikings, through to The Last Kingdom, The Vikings and Vikings Valhalla TV show. They even burn Canute on a boat in Vikings
Mhm.
Valhalla season 3 as the final funeral of King Canute, a fully Christian Danish king who power extended to Norway and England, and he was buried in Winchester in the Minster there. So what the heck? But they just can't stop themselves; they have to do it. And likewise here, there is one mythological account from the Prose Edda of Balder, the god, after being killed by his brother by accident type of arrangement. The influence of Loki. He is cremated on his boat that's pushed out over the waves, alight, no flaming arrows. That's purely Hollywood. Then you have in Heimskringla, the Sea King Haki sets himself alight with his slain warriors on a boat in a fjord. And you also have so there's a sort of mythological and legendary two exceptional examples. And then we have from the Old English poem Beowulf as a sort of origin story, Shield Skeefing, the sort of chief of the early king, proto king of Denmark, arrives like Moses in a vessel as a foundling, and upon his death, he is sent back out over the waves in a boat, but no fire. So we have those kind of stories, amongst others, that have inspired this 19th century obsession with and then into the era of Hollywood, and then subsequently into our streaming service era. The Vikings have to go out over water and be burnt on over water because it's what we want Vikings to do, not because there's much evidence. Now, I'm not saying we can prove it didn't happen, but like so much in the Viking Age, we can always make up stuff. But the fact is, this is a very much a trope of our Viking Age, rather than a Boromir and the Lord of the Rings style funeral, rather than anything from our source material.
Yeah, and I feel like in order to take something as truth, it's not about whether you can't prove that it didn't happen, it's that you must prove that it did.
Yes, or at least was one option. It's not simply, John, it's not simply the point that we're showing it as one option. I wouldn't object to it or criticize it if it was just there's 58 funerals and one of them is shown in this way, or there's
Right.
16 battles and all they ever do is go shield wall. And it's the fact that every conflict is shown using a similar set of techniques or practices, and that's when it becomes pernicious and problematic, because you are basically suggesting there's some innate ethnic desire to honor the dead by pushing them out in boats over water and setting them alight with flaming arrows, which is a complete modern stylization. I mean, at one level, like most of these things, it's mostly harmless, apart from the fact that it spins a misinformation, and that can be misused in particular ways, depending on who you're talking to or where. And the idea of dying like a Viking or a Viking funeral now in popular culture, if you say that to anyone, they will think of flaming arrows, they will
Flaming
think of
arrow on a
burning on
boat.
boats. And we have there's lots of like all misinformation. There's lots of truth in it. We know that boats were used in a variety of different ways in funerary rituals. There's lots of truth in that image. In terms of the decking of a body with a sword over the body and objects around it. Frankly, we've got burials almost identical to that found inhumation burials on land. So, there's a lot there to be commended. It's not wrong in the sense that it's completely misleading and outrageously. There are aspects of this, the craft, the clothing, that you could say, well, yeah, that's all right. It's just worth mentioning this broader problem of this modern desire to insist on a Viking funeral over water.
Over water. Now, I will say the other burial, I forget the guy's name, but he was a Viking king, I guess in the game he was anyway. But they put him on a wooden platform, do a similar thing where they surround him with all these gifts and goods and things that he liked, and then they burn him on top of a hilltop on a flattened wooden platform. And then at the same later in the game, as a couple people die in your village, you
Yeah.
actually put them in the ground in a similar fashion, like you bury
So,
them.
I mean, that is one of the things that I have defended the TV show Vikings and other fictional portrayals, is that many of them do show variety and variability, and they are listening to some of the experts who have excavated thousands of burials, and there's no two burials
Yeah,
alike, and so I'm not completely dismissing this representation. I there may have been disposing of the dead, burnt or unburnt, over water as one of the options, but we have a lot of evidence from landward locations showing that they were doing things on land, and it's
they were
good to
doing
show that
both,
variety. Yes,
at
that's
least.
really good.
Very cool. And then I had something to go along with that, and my ADHD took it away from me.
Okay. Most of my brain is like that all the time. But yeah, the funerals it's great to see funerals in there, and it's great to see them represented, but
Yes,
I wish they would put another record on sometimes. Yeah.
this was the thought. It was me in the game who robbed the Sutton Hoo treasure.
No way.
It was me.
Right.
I took it.
Well, this is outrageous. Because, of course, the odd thing about Mound 1 at Sutton Hoo is it wasn't robbed. All the other graves were
I
robbed.
know. I know. I know.
So if you robbed
So
that,
the
you've
way
just
they have,
taken from us. And because this is actually real, and you were connected to this Canadian burials DNA, and we haven't got any Canadian Norse burials, but if it's obviously true because you played the game. So how else could it be explained?
you play the
So
game.
really, they should just
Exactly.
what is in the British Museum, mate? What are they claiming they've got? Because obviously they haven't got it.
Propaganda. It's
Wheels
propaganda.
within wheels. Like who do we
Yep.
believe?
The
Sorry,
game,
basically.
of course. You
Of
must believe the
course,
game.
it's truth. I saw it on
And the
TV.
the way they had,
They're eating the cats. They're
the
eating the
way they,
dogs. I saw it on TV. I saw it in a
oh my
video
gosh,
game.
I saw on news. What news did you see it on? I don't know.
Someone said it on Vikings Valhalla. It definitely happened, man. It's definitely.
It definitely happened. And even the way
Sorry.
they had even the way they had the Sutton Hoo set up, it was so badly inaccurate that
We
I
haven't. You haven't included one of
purposefully
those. We'll have to do that as a future
no,
thing.
I threw it out. You literally like it's a boat that's halfway in the green and it's basically surrounded by pirates, if you will, like not pirates, but like
Settlements of.
the equivalent of gangs in that time, like these not Vikings, not English, not these just like
Well,
just
if I can
bad
speak to that,
dudes.
because I have seen images of it, people have shared with me, and I can say that I think one of the problems with video games is they struggle with, because of the way that the landscape is represented in video games. There's many great points about this immersive experience of exploring an ancient land. There's much you can learn,
Yes,
but one of the things it struggles with is geology, and they rarely understand unless they've been to the British Isles. Everything's rock, everything's like some kind of Norwegian like gneiss or
yes,
granite, and they don't understand depth. You either have massive subterranean caverns in video games, or you just have like little shallow. Everything's shallow. Oh look, it's just flip over a stone and there it is. And because no offense to video gamers and game creators, but none of them have dug a hole in their life. None of them have had to do physical labor. None of them have ever had to break a sweat doing interacting with the soil. And
that
I'm sorry to be
right.
snooty, but that does affect how you
No, but you're an
understand landscape.
archaeologist, like that's
And as an archaeologist, or if you're a builder, or you're a pipe, if you're a plumber, or anybody that has to occasionally get beneath a floor surface or into a ground, you probably would have a more sophisticated or nuanced sense of excavation, of getting into the ground. But that's another story. Like in all the zombie
no,
fictions, they never dig
absolutely.
ditches. And wouldn't it be good? Just dig a ditch and the zombies all fall in it. But do they do it? No. Oh, let's build another massive defended settlement, but we won't put any ditches around the outside because we don't think about ditches because we're a mechanized society. Whereas if you asked a 19th century, Appalachian, what would you do to stop yourself from a zombie apocalypse or whatever Viking invasion or whatever fantasy scenario? They'd
I
go,
dig a
I'd dig a
trench.
ditch, or whatever it may
Yeah.
be, as well as a wall, or as well as palisades or whatever. Anyway, that's another rant I have about disconnect from agricultural life, of rural life. Well, not you, but
No, and that's very true. Because
you
even
know,
in the game, all the artifacts are either just below and sticking out of the surface, or they are 5,000 feet under the ground.
yeah, you can't have that. Yeah, and it's a massive bugbear of mine because they can consult with historians and archaeologists on some points, but the game's always for me when I've seen gameplay, I always think this is great and it looks so realistic and yet utterly not. And I would wish I could have the skills to do a parody of this with something that people are familiar with from an urban setting. And if you had metro lines that were
Yeah.
just literally two steps down or something. I'm trying to think of an analogy that would sort of really people go, what, have they never been to London or New York City and seen an underground railway system? You don't just like hop down two steps. Well, sometimes you do, but most of the but it's equivalent. They don't
Most of the
have a
time, yeah.
they don't have a sense of
To get
depth. We're
on
getting off track.
to get on, in Piccadilly, you have to walk down 15, 20 sets of stairs
Yeah,
to
yeah,
get
yeah,
on the train.
yeah.
Um,
Some of the deep cut
so
ones, bore.
imagine if it was two,
Yeah,
like people would notice that.
yeah. It's like what we're willing to accept as authentic and what we won't. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Image number two. Now, around the Ravensthorpe, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Ravensthorpe?
Ravensthorpe is in Northamptonshire. Is that where it's supposed to be?
Yes, 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 yes.
So middle of the
And
country, the Midlands.
what used to be Mercia, or
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, cool. That'll do.
yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so have they found Viking graves, Viking settlements, Viking stuff in that area?
You know what they have, but I think they've picked that just because it's got a Thorpe place name, and Raven is evocative of the Danes, of their Raven
Yeah, you're the
banner.
Raven clan.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
your clan name.
So I think that honestly, I think that's why they've picked on that place name, not because there's any archaeology specifically from Ravensthorpe. I'm happy to be corrected, but my instinct is they've gone with the place name. Thorpe is a place name suffix that is linked to Scandinavian sites,
Hmm.
of Scunthorpe, Cleethorpes. it's a thought place names are thought to link back to the Viking Age, and
Gotcha.
they've gone for Raven, and I think that's as simple as that. So it's like kind of I'm happy to look
Low
it up. I
hanging
haven't looked it
fruit.
up. Yeah, a low hanging fruit, but it's kind of it serves as symbolic of Scandinavian interaction with the British landscape. So I think they've and Northamptonshire was in the Danelaw. It fits in geographically at the centre of the England, if not the centre of the island. So I think that's their thinking. But I'm happy to be corrected. But I don't think there's
Yeah,
anything exciting happening in Ravensthorpe that's inspired their show, their
their
representation.
game. Okay. And you do interact with a lot of you do interact with a lot of those areas around England. So, you really are immersed in the landscape, if you will. So a lot of the places you're naming, you go there and
Yeah, yeah.
you have battles, or you make alliances or whatever. And so it's also kind of a middle ground where you can get everywhere pretty quick, based off of where it's laid out on the map of the game. But image number two, and
Yeah, so Longship.
longship. What do you think about that longship? Now
Okay,
that
so
is the picturesque longship throughout the whole game, unless you do some sort of magical creations to change
okay,
it. Like if you just upgrade it and keep it, like that's the way it looks.
okay. So this is a relatively medium-sized Viking period longship. By visuals, I would say this is about uh, 18, 20 meters long, I think.
Yeah, yeah. 20
60
is
foot.
what I was.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose early Viking Age craft. So they've thought about the Gokstad ship as the inspiration. This is therefore, you would think, comfortably rooted in the archaeological evidence. We've known what Viking longships look like in general terms since the 80s with the Gokstad ship, Oseberg from 1904, and then subsequently finds throughout the 20th century. So it's the one part of the Viking world where we think we can be absolutely categorical. We've got a good sense of what they look like are the longships. There's been many reconstructions of them since the late 19th century, and also in parts of Scandinavia that for smaller fishing vessels, the clinker-built ship design survives. So we've got the ethno-historical evidence of how they built these. So you would think this is 100% therefore this is 100% accurate to what we know, and yet I have questions. For example, the one question that comes to my mind immediately is where is the shelter, where is the tent, where is the you're all just on, it's all summer, is it? So it's this lovely summer weather, you just got, there's nothing on deck,
No,
you're not
you
gonna,
travel through the snow and everything just like that.
you'd never have a tent. You'd have a tent. You'd cover. You'd freeze. Even with the best wool, they were making really good waterproof skins and stuff. You'd still freeze your backside off if you were trying to do anything outside of a river or a fjord. If you're trying to actually go proper nautical, go proper mariner, you are going to freeze to the. There's no storage space. It's all open. It's a few barrels. It's just a completely exposed space. In that sense, it's accurate to the archaeological evidence, but it's utterly silly to imagine that the way we find them in the archaeological record is how they would have been used. They would have at least one or not two tents there up permanently, or at least partially, so that you can store your goods. The underdeck storage, you'd have covers, and also you'd have animals with you. You'd have chickens, you'd
Exactly.
have
You have to
ducks, you'd have
eat.
geese, pigs, goats, cows, horses if you're transporting warriors. You'd have ponies, what we'd call ponies, but they're horses for them. So there's my critical point. It looks comfy. It looks like there's way too much space. And the other point I would say is I think the sail, to my eye, from what I've seen with reconstructions, the sail is a little too small and also a bit too high. And the other thing I would say most assuredly is why is it made of one color with massive great art print style art on it? This is like sort of 70s 80s pop poster arts or Lego style. I mean, maybe they did that, but you look at all the representations. The sails are made on vertical looms. They're made of wool or linen on vertical looms, and they would have been made of strips, and they would have had to have woven the strips of about a meter thick diagonally across. And we see that diagonal pattern on the Gotlandic picture stones representation ships. So ship sails are probably bicolor, multicolored, in other words, but they would have had a distinctive um, uh,
weaving patterns.
weave a pattern that would have been a cross cut
Yeah,
so that they
yeah.
had the strength. And why just have it as one color with a vertical? I think there's hints there of a vertical strips. No, I think that looks silly. So I don't know why they've done that. But so do you know what? I'm just trying to be nitpicky, and I'm just trying to give your listeners the
No,
sense that
no, we want to be
it,
accurate. That's what
you know,
that's what the point
the
is.
fact that the boats are painted, the shields are painted, the boat itself is painted, is good. We have evidence they would have done that. We've had descriptions. Boats may have had their prows painted as well. Though I don't know why they've gone for bare wood on the prows and then painted strakes. I think it's much more likely the other way round, that the I can't remember all the boat terms, but the bow and stern prows and the actual edges edges, I can't think of the words, would most likely have been the decorated bits. And yeah, but anyway, but those points aside, these would have been important. These would have been the tools, they would have been vehicles, they would have been symbols of status and display. They would have been, they would have wanted them to look nice. And so the color is not a problem. But I did want to point out they would have been a lot more busy. They would have had structures. They would have had animals in them. It depends on the trip. But even if you're on a raiding party, you want your ponies with you, wouldn't you? Or at least a
Well,
few.
that's what I was about to say. Would a ship like this? Because this was I took this image on the way to a raid. I was headed to raid a church.
And how many men you got in there then? So you got about 20.
About 20. Yeah, yeah.
It's a bit small, isn't it? You'd want about double that really if you want to do some
That's
damage.
what But I
I would have.
mean, you yourself take out half the village by your
Of course. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yes, because you're super. I'd want a good 30,
yeah,
40 men really. And
and that's what I would figure they would travel with,
you need some
and then they would
slaves and some
need.
women as well. You're not going to go without the women. Why would you not have women on board? Do you have women on board?
You have women in your crew.
But are they warriors,
Um,
or they just
yeah, they
are
were
they mixed?
warriors,
I mean, you would maybe have some women warriors, but maybe not. That's another whole debate. But
right?
you certainly want some people to do the cooking, the sewing, and all of the actual work. Because all of these, like all TV shows, all the battles, everyone just turns up without a pan and some soup. And you
Yeah,
go, well, hang
yeah,
on,
yeah.
what are they going to eat? All the orcs, all the baddies have to do is just wait around for a day till they all starve, and they go, oh,
Well, and
actually,
there's
you got any biscuits over there? Yeah, yeah. You want to have some? And they go, oh, we also got some. You got some ale? Maybe you're on
some
the.
mead.
Maybe we'll go onto your side. They don't bring any supplies. Is my point. And I get frustrated by these warriors without supplies fantasy. I mean, where are you fighting? I mean, what are you doing? I mean, yes, you can raid for chickens and you can raid for things, but you need some backup. You need
Well,
some.
there's also there's no storage on the boat to place
Yeah, yeah,
these things.
yeah.
And so it
So you'd
doesn't ever
really.
show you it doesn't ever show you loading treasure. Like once you have it, it just kind of goes into the bake, if you will.
I think the other bottom line is, Jono, is you wouldn't really raid in a single ship. That's a bit dumb.
That's
There's
true. You would bring
so much
three
can
or
go wrong.
four.
You'd
Yes.
want backup boats. You'd want backup boats for the loot you're going to acquire, for the risk potential of losing a craft, or for bad seas, a whale knocks it over, or a random
Someone
wave,
throws a
or
torch in it.
yeah, someone throws a torch in it. There's also so much that can go wrong. Is my point. That I think it's really healthy and important to just reflect on what is going on here. What are they trying to
Right.
show us? And it's a very, and you think, well, that's all just neutral, Howard. That doesn't do it. But it does feed into a very much a what could you call it? I'm trying to think of the word, of a adventuring, independent.
Fantasy.
Yeah. So like when you show mountaineers, if you Google mountaineers, you'll show millions of pictures of individual mountaineers
They
climbing
all
bits
look
of difficult.
glorious.
You'll never see their base camps and the Sherpas and the supply lines that make it all possible. In the same way, it's like showing this is like an advert for a new Honda or a new, or these Land Rover adverts where they will show these on the edges of glaciers and these cars in ludicrous cliff sides and
Right.
going over rugged streams and things. That's lovely, but doesn't it need fuel? Doesn't it need repairs for its tires? You'd never see a garage appear in that fantasy, and this is very much like that. You'll never do they show the ships being taken out of water, repainted, recorked? Do they show them
They
being
show them
maintained?
being built, but that's it.
Okay,
They show shipyards, but that's about it. And also to go along with that, it creates more of that fantasy realm of like
Yeah, which is fine, but
these
just
Vikings took a few and dominated the masses.
again, that's fine. It's a fun game. We've if we're gonna say, oh, this is accurate, you think, well, where would you be in a single longship, literally on your own, without backup, without support, without stores? You are literally heading for you're cruising for a bruising, or whatever phrase you want to
Yeah,
use. You're heading for a disaster, or whatever the phrase is. You're asking for trouble.
it's
Risky.
as an Appalachian, the recreation or the pictures and the things that we see of Daniel Boone, for instance, it's always just him in a coon hat with a stick, wearing very light, deerskin clothing, and it's like that's not how
Yes.
he would have made it through. He would have died
No.
very quickly. He would have died very, 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 very quickly if he would have
Yes.
tried to go through that way.
It's like a young, healthy woman who's clearly just jogged to the top of the and looking out over the Grand Canyon. And it's an idealistic moment of elation or a rocky moment at the top of the steps. It's a lovely ideal, but then you've got to think of the logistics, the making of these sails. That sail would have taken a year of a group of women to weave that thing. This is literally weeks and weeks and weeks of labor. You're looking at these are high class, expensive things. So it's not that you could show that in a TV show. It's like in a Hollywood film, you'll never see someone on a toilet apart from John Travolta. No one else goes to the loo in every other film. You have to suspend your disbelief. I'm not saying
Well,
they should
Jeff,
every.
what's his name? Dumb and Dumber. Jeff.
Yes, I can't remember the name.
The toilet scene.
Yeah, yeah. So there's exceptions that prove the rule.
Yeah, yeah.
The fact is, you can't show every gritty detail, but I'm just trying to say that when we look at an image, it'd be so easy for me to say that is accurate to what we know, but is it authentic? I'm not sure you would be risking it going on a single boat with no tent, no stores, no animals, no women, no backup.
Gotcha.
That's my
And I
killjoy. Of
agree. I appreciate them giving the simplistic overview and an idea
course.
of what it looks like, and they didn't do a horrible job of it.
No, no, not at all. It's
But
great. It's
I do
accurate to what
wish
we
it
have.
would at least do a cut scene where you see it. If you're not going to have it because it convolutes the game, it makes too much imagery, it weighs it down, that's fine. But throw a cut scene in it where you see them under the canopy on the boat eating. Or, do something like that where you inform the player of a little bit more of the history of what these things would have been like. Show them all sharing the same bowl to wash their face in the morning.
This is why it's so good to do these things, because it's only when someone's put in all the effort, all of the computer programming skill, all of the consultants to create this. It's not to say they've done something that's wrong. They have allowed us then to have these conversations, which I can have with students and think, well, what is right? It's not about them, oh, they got it wrong. I'm afraid the whole game is now invalid. How dare you enjoy it? It's
No, no,
about
no, no.
getting people into the conversations. And other specialists will probably turn around and say to me, Howard, you're really unfair there. It's not about arguing over some real single truth.
No, no, no.
We know this is fiction. It's about trying to
Bringing
think
more context to
through
it.
the issues. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Right. So, okay, moving on. Image number 3. Now,
Yes.
this is just a Viking hangout. This is what would be happening before a raiding night
Of
or
course it would.
a ceremony or things like that. And this is
Okay.
kind of how
Where do we
everybody
start?
looks in the game. A blacksmith there who wouldn't be
Yeah.
doing that. Of
In
course,
the middle of,
he would
yeah,
have his own spot.
he'd have a canopy at least, wouldn't he? I mean, it's not going to work very well with
Exactly.
no wind. Where's his hearth? I suppose it's around the corner. Okay, I mean, do you want to talk about the fact that none of the clothing is right, of course, all this untrimmed leather, untrimmed fur, this ridiculous amounts of leather, the colours. I mean, what's he wearing around his ankles on the left there? I mean, what is that supposed to be achieving in the grander scheme of the universe? I mean, what is that?
I
What's that
want to
for?
say it's like fox fur or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe, but no. And what's he got on his back? There's no back scabbards. Why are they doing that? I don't know. All of the silly bits. Yeah, most of this is nonsense, although some bits are good. So the guy on the second from the right, the non-blacksmith guy he's got sort of some kind of, we got evidence of plate armor like that from the Byzantine world and also from the pre-Viking world from Scandinavia. So there's bits of that I think are quite good, but then why would he combine that by having completely free arms without any protection? The most important thing you'd want to protect is your head and your fingers. So why, oh why do they have? Why am I seeing bare hands if you're going into battle? Why am I seeing
This is
bare
the night
heads?
before.
All
This is the
right,
night before. They're not in battle yet. They're like, this is the
no.
night before.
Okay, so
But
they got the Raven
why
banner.
would
I
they be
like that.
dressed in yeah, why would they be dressed in full gear the night before when they're going to
Yeah,
get on the ship the next day?
yeah.
They would be
I mean,
more in casual Viking wear.
yeah. I mean, I like. I mean, the other things I would say, there's this Raven banner. You've got the Raven, which is off the coin of or Olaf Guthrisson, the Danish king of York, who of course was
Hmm.
defeated, had his ass whipped at the Battle of Brunanburh by Athelstan. But he minted coins with that Raven, and that's the Raven that everyone thinks of when they sort of put on the Raven banner. So that's like a back projection of 80 years.
Okay.
And they've put that on the banner, but it's that idea of the Danes have a raven banner, and we don't know what the raven banner looked like, but that's just one of many attempts to show it, and that has a
No,
film tradition because I think that raven was used in the 1969 Alfred the Great film. So I think the
it
idea
was.
that the raven banner is the silver coin of Anlaf Guthrisson is it's got pedigree within Hollywood and film and stuff. I think that's really good, and I
It
love
does.
the
Now, what do
idea
you
of a
think
big.
of that?
Go on.
What do you think of the housing in the back?
Yeah, so they put up some massive temporary tents, haven't they? And they've done it with massive poles to create sort of it's almost like a royal tent. I actually think that's really convincing. I mean, obviously the color is difficult to. I don't think they would
These
have
are
had
all
that much.
royal people in this picture.
It
In this
must
picture,
be.
these are all royal
Yeah.
people. Yes.
So the idea of making things red as royalty is not. It would have been a high status color and very difficult to create that much red cloth. So I like the idea that's the ultimate opulence. I don't know if we have any actual archaeological evidence of something like that, but I just love the concept of the visuals of that. That
Yeah, yeah.
temporary dwellings could be really quite substantial and tense across the early medieval world, from the steppes and the Avars and and their successors, right the way through to Anglo-Saxon England. Temporary structures would have been really important for mobile trade merchants and for kings and their retainers. So I love the idea. The scale of it is a bit over the top because then you've still got to carry those massive beams around, and I don't know who's moving
Right.
those. But if you're moving by ship, it's not ridiculous just to have that aspect. No,
No,
I
but you would
have a
need more than one boat.
yeah, yeah. Or you have to put them along the side or something. I mean, the other thing
Yeah.
that I find I have to say is really I'm intrigued about, and I don't know where the origin. Someone's got to tell me this. That there's this particular style of tower that they use in here, and that they use in the TV show The Last Kingdom, and with this, I don't know my architectural terms to describe it, but with this very narrow spire at the top of it, and
Like a
you know,
witch's
with
hat.
with the witch's hat,
It
yeah.
looks like a
And
witch's
that
hat.
is, I need to know where they're getting that idea. I think they're getting it from some late medieval Central European architecture, and it's being reproduced in multiple games and films as them daisy early medieval towers. And I'm not saying it's wrong because it may well be, but I find it interesting that they keep doing that. And I've seen that in The Last Kingdom. I think it's Durham. They represent Durham as having
Yeah.
something like that, and I'm just intrigued, where's that coming from? And I don't know, and I'd love to know, but it's certainly coming from somewhere. As a sort of
Yeah.
aesthetic trait, there's
And
no
most of those
evidence for it.
have straw roofs
All right.
when you get to them in the game. Most of
No.
them are straw or
Well,
straw
that
roofs
pitch
that
for
you can
that
set
would
on
be all
fire.
wrong, as you know. You can't have that shallow a pitch on a straw roof. It would just be
No,
useless. So
that
no,
would
I
be
mean
useless.
yeah. So that's rubbish. If it was shingles or something like that, that'd be that's fine. But I don't
Or some
understand.
sort of copper or
Yeah.
metals or, you know. And we had
Yeah.
metalworking. And I mean, the Vikings were
Yeah, I mean,
iron
you doubt
experts.
you'd use it on a roof, but wooden tiles, shingles, or
All right.
you would have had
Stones,
thatch, but I don't think they would have
slate.
slates. Yes, so slates would have been used as well in areas with stone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we have early medieval slates. Yeah, so there's lots there to get you thinking. Is what I'd
Yeah.
say politely.
Now,
And
number
hairstyles, we don't know much about, of course. This is the female version of Evil.
that's it is, and there is a lot of dreadlocks in the game and things like that,
No
which
comment.
we don't know anything about.
No. And face paint, I see, which or are they
Yes,
supposed to be tattoos?
yeah, those are tattoos.
Okay.
There is a
Again,
lot of tattooing in the game, and the pics are all depicted as,
depicting the pits.
um, yeah, the depicting pics. They're all painted like they're Braveheart,
Of course.
you know.
Well,
So
this is all
the
modern aesthetics, is all I have to
Scotland
say
blue,
for I've got video.
Scotland
I've got
blue.
playlists. Yeah, they've got video playlists about the modern day assumption that the
Yes,
pictured
on your
folk, the
TikTok.
painted folk, means they were all painted. Well, they may have been, but it may be just a nickname that's just caught on. Like the Lombards' origin myth is that their women all grew beards or pretended to
Right.
have beards. So does that mean that they had longer beards because they were called the Lombards? I mean, it's just an origin myth for a name. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. Likewise, if there were people with face tats all over the show in the early Middle Ages, fire enough, but we've got no evidence for it, and
No,
there's no
because all the
reason why
skin
we'd
is gone.
assume. Yeah, we'd no reason to assume that the Picts had any more or less than anyone else. So it's all
Exactly.
fun, but it gets into very heated online arguments about this stuff.
It does because people act like what they've seen in pop culture is absolute. And that's what I want to get at is like these none of this is absolutes. This is a broad, very vaguely painted picture in order to create a fun video game, which it was. Great job at creating a fun video game. You get to you get to raid and plunder, and it is a blast.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, bringing in a little bit of like, hey, you guys think about it, don't take this as truce because Assassin's Creed kind of has this representation because they do tie a lot of history into their games. Like their recreation of ancient Egypt, it was so considered so accurate that universities use it. And so maybe I'll show you that one day of the recreation of Egypt because it is pretty amazing. And, you know, and how I'm not an Egyptologist, but
Nor
anyway,
I.
moving on, moving
No,
on.
no, it's good stuff though that they've thought this through, and yeah, there's some
Yes,
really. I
they're
mean, I'm not
not
saying it's wrong,
completely careless.
but again, by getting us this far and showing a camp,
Yes,
it helps us to think about, well, what do we know, and
yes,
how.
yeah. Because you're traveling on that boat, and you go, well, how did they travel? And so you start looking it up, and so hopefully it does inspire thought and not
Yeah,
just acceptance.
exactly.
And so number four,
Let's move on. Oh, right. Okay. So do you want me to tell
he's
you? I can
missing
tell you.
his member.
No, he's not. No, no. This is the Long Man of Wilmington. He doesn't have a member.
Oh, this is not CERN.
No. This is the
Okay, tell me
other.
about this one.
Right. Okay. So this is in Sussex, and he's called the Long Man of Wilmington. And the Long Man of Wilmington is a chalk hill figure, and he's
Which
one
he
of
is
yeah,
on the
which
game.
is this. And there's been a lot of speculation of his age. And one idea is that he is a representation of Odin with his spears. But unfortunately, the most likely evidence we have based on dating is that he was carved long after the Viking Age in the 16th or 17th century. So there's been a new synthesis about chalk hill figures. We've got the Cerne Abbas giant is now dated to the Saxon period. So if they'd shown the Cerne Abbas giant, that would have been accurate.
You know, maybe it does, and I haven't found it yet because it is a huge. It's complete open world. You can travel everywhere.
So, but the thing is, this is most likely an early medieval, early modern 16th or 17th century, or perhaps even early 18th century. But there's still debates, and maybe it was an older version. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it because there has been a lot of speculation over whether this is actually representing an early medieval warrior or hero or king or there's still that option. But at the moment, I would say this is 4 and 5, which you've got. Oh no, the same one's 4. Yeah,
Yeah,
you've
the
got
same.
basically
This is a different view.
he's visiting a hill figure. It's a real historical monument. They're trying to, and the key point is not whether it was there in the 9th century. It's about how they're trying to take you on a journey into ancient Britain, and I think that's really cool.
And if it's tied to Odin, that would also make sense that it would be in there because Odin is your conscious in the game. And so anytime you kill somebody of the secret society or a high king or something like that, Odin comes and talks to you. And Odin looks just like you. You're kind of a reincarnated version of Odin is the point.
Not like me, you mean like Hitler?
When you yeah, exactly. So, like, when you go into Asgard, you are Odin. And so you begin, like, as the human is Ivar in the Amulus, you are Odin inside of the Amulus.
Okay.
So there's like a triple decker thing happening there. And so it would make sense that if it is tied to Odin in any way, they would put it there so that he would see it. Because it would remind him of who he actually is.
Yeah.
So that could be, and I like that they, tying it to the old world.
Yeah.
And I haven't searched for a lot of, now, is there anything at the bottom of that hill?
I don't think so. I mean,
All
it's
right, so
agricultural
like
land. I don't think.
in the game, if on the aerial view on that picture, if you'll look towards the bottom of it, you will see the remnants of a stone structure.
Was that
where
what
there
it
was,
is? A stone circle or something?
Yeah, there was standing stones depicted
Okay.
in the
I'll
game.
have to check out, but I don't think so. I think they're a bit of creative license.
I don't think they're, yeah. Especially if it's, the just a few hundred years ago. Like, there's not going to.
But they're making stuff.
All right.
That's cool.
So number 5.
Yeah. So we got. Yeah.
This is Paris and its walls, and this is just before you embark on the siege of Paris. Now, when did the siege of Paris happen?
Okay. So we've got 2 sieges of Paris. So it depends which siege we're talking about, really. So you got. I'll have to get my dates up, but you've got a siege of Paris in the 850s. In a siege of 845, sorry, and then you've got the subsequent siege of Paris in 885 to 886. So
It would be that one.
Yeah,
it would be that one because the game starts in like 870s.
So I mean, they've got an island. There's an island in a river. You've got this. It's heavily Latinized, heavily Roman. The idea it almost looks like it's in modern day Italy. If anyone's been to Paris, I think Paris is like this. I mean, maybe like Britain. Northern France is a bleak place, like most of Britain is. From an American audience, we're not basking in constant sunshine. So it's very Latin. I mean, I suppose that's part of the aesthetic, is showing that the Franks are the inheritors of the Roman world. There's clearly ruined. You got a sort of broken, but you got a bathhouse in the foreground with a broken roof. You've got churches that are damaged, whether that's damaged by the Vikings themselves. You've got major gateways and a massively broad bridge. It evokes the landscape of Paris, an island fortification at the centre with 2 suburbs on the north and south bank. In that sense, there's a lot to commend this. He says diplomatically, but other than that, it's they're really trying to overplay the amount of surviving masonry of Roman date, I think.
Yeah, there is a lot of, and I think that because the following game was Odyssey, which was about the Romans, and so I think they were starting to kind of get you on that Roman track, because even in Ravensthorpe, there is a person who is a Roman artifact collector in your village, and you're bringing artifacts from Rome to him throughout the whole game. So they're painting this idea of Rome building for their next game.
So that links very much into the next image. If I may jump to Palace de la Cité, you've got the same aesthetic. They're trying for high Romanized Christian culture, massive basilica church with a central tower like that. I don't know where they're getting that particular idea from. I'll have to look it up. But also the fortifications are very clear. The idea of Roman inspired ruins.
Oh yeah, especially like the top of the church where the steeple is.
And they've also got I like that mix of almost like an early medieval repair. I like that. They're trying. I mean, there's lots you can quibble, but I like the idea of it's old. There's a Roman inheritance, and then you've got I like that balance. I mean, it gives you that sense of antiquity and repair. Yeah, that's all I can say about that one,
Now,
really.
is this place in ruins today? Is it a real?
Yeah, I mean, this is completely this is a complete sort of fiction of the sort of the isle in the River Seine at the centre of Paris. So basically, you've been jumped into the centre of Paris, and you're looking at this kind of guess of that interaction between a site that probably had a it was Lutetia, as you know from any Asterix book. This is the sort of pre-Roman oppidum, and then of the Parisy, and then it becomes the focus of a Roman city, a Roman town. And so what they're trying to do is give you a kind of the prehistory of the Notre Dame de Paris kind of thing. That's what they're trying to give you. That you're on an
Gotcha.
island in a city surrounded by a sprawl. It's trying to give you that sense of a defensible space. But this is utterly, if you've ever been to Paris, you know it's quite a restricted island. And so I think they are trying to, in video game format, they're trying to embody that really. Yeah,
That
I
makes
think.
sense.
Yeah, I think so.
I have never been there. That is not a place I stopped when I came to your side of the world.
Okay. I have been many a
But
year since I've been there.
it is a place I would like to see for sure. And so this place is a fictional place. Like this not even in ruins. Like this is a just fictional idea trying to give you a picture of something.
Yeah. I mean, but to be honest, when you get into like the Last Kingdom shows London and Vikings Valhalla show London, and all of these TV shows are obsessed with trying to make these 9th century cities look very Latinized, very Romanized.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to push back against that a little bit, but I see why they're trying to do that. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Now, number 7 is, how do you say that?
Evreux, I would say
Evra
Evreux.
Cathedral.
Cathedral, yeah. So they're showing a Norman cathedral, sort of in the before Normandy, but a Norman city landscape. You've got tiled roofs after the Roman style and chimneys. I'm a little skeptical about that, but you're given a small settlement surrounding a major church. So with a bishop centre, a cathedral is a bishop's church, a seat of a bishop. You've got a tower there. You've got
You
I mean, you've got
assassinate the bishop
well, he's
because he was part
I
of
mean,
the order.
clearly. I mean, everyone knows where he is. Yeah,
Express.
bishops are powerful in the early medieval church.
Yes.
They would have been influential. They were politicians. They were important for the economy of a region. So yeah, they are the sort of local gang leaders type. So they're important. They're important figures in the church hierarchy and the economy and society. So yeah, I mean, you've got temporary structures. You've got that sense of it helps to emphasise the grandiose nature of a church. These would be outside of Paris. It'd be rare to see stone built structures other than churches. And I
Right.
think that is really that's hinted at here, because even though it's got
It
the
is.
tile roof, the building in the foreground, and that it's got a brick chimney, I don't know, you certainly got the evidence the rest of the structure is probably timber frame. So I think I'll give this a
I
not
would
top
say it would
mark.
be a mud chimney, if anything,
Yeah.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we don't know exactly what these churches look like, but that is a prayer from coinage and art that doesn't look outrageous, is my point.
Now, is there a cathedral that this
There
would
was,
be?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Although the first cathedral was built in the 11th century, so they're back projecting this a little bit.
Yeah.
So
But is it accurate as far as how it would have looked?
well, we don't know.
We don't. Oh, it's gone.
I'm just saying it doesn't look outrageous for a ecclesiastical centre in the 9th, 10th, 11th century, but equally
Gotcha.
that height of tower and the tower actually on the church is probably a later medieval phenomenon. That's a 12th, 13th century arrangement. I think you probably have a
Yeah.
separate bell tower, but I'm just picking holes in things.
No. That's because that would have been after the Viking Age.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
would have
yeah.
been.
Yes.
That would have been. They were
Yeah.
done.
But for audiences, it looks like a medieval church, and that's all that matters. It's almost like people need some things to be very Viking, but when it gets to Christian culture, it's just like a timeless, Christian-y, medievally vibe, and that's all that really needs to be conveyed, and that audiences require. There's not
And I
people who
think
go,
that
"Oh, that's
probably
a
is
that's a
the.
late 10th century
Yeah.
arch there." The people don't care about that type of stuff. It's really, yeah. So this is looking about 200 years out of date, at least, probably 250, but it is what it is.
But at the same time, putting it in a video game and making someone aware of the site is not
Yeah,
necessarily a bad thing.
No, exactly, and it shows ecclesiastical centres in towns, but the towns are not vast.
Right.
They're not huge,
And
great.
most towns would have been centered around a religious
Yes,
structure.
absolutely. The whole survival of towns in late antique Gaul, as opposed to Anglo-Saxon England, where there's not really survival, is around their ecclesiastical centre. They're
Exactly.
markets, but they're also the centres of bishops. So yes, that's absolutely true.
Okay, and that game does very much point that out. That it is very all throughout the game. Most of the people you encounter have ties to bishops. You spend lots of times in churches and things like that. Even when you're coming into England, they're doing baptisms on the side of like the river, like in the beginning of the game.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
The Vikings are kind of laughing at them. They're like, wait, their God died on a cross and they worship him.
They seem to find that as a
I'll
constant
bring
theme of
Thor's
them.
hammer.
That's a constant cliche of these programs, though, and they do that in
Yes,
Vikings all the time. And the idea that the people from Scandinavia had no clue what Christianity was
it's
and thought it was
insane.
some kind of I mean, it is like a kind of deliberate, like your deliberate goading videos you've done, Jono, like British
Right.
people eat beans on toast. In that sense, or whatever it may be, it's okay to do as a joke, but in honestly, course people like it's like going to a football game. If you're a football fan, you're going to another country. You go, my God, here in Germany, do they actually do this? You're trying to goad
Right.
people. You're not actually. So
You're
I
not.
understand it as a
Yes.
dynamic, but of course they knew what Christians were doing,
Exactly. Exactly.
and they
That's
had a
what I was.
framework of reference that would have helped them to understand that.
Yes, very much so. Now, image number 8. We just crossed the hour mark, and I want to be respectful of your
Roasting.
time.
Sorry, there you are. I'm back. Sorry about that.
Now you're good.
Urim. Right. Now, I don't know much about the archaeology of this site, but this is an Iron Age. This is an Iron Age a Gallic site from the Iron Age that is that is not far from Paris. That is then that is continues into the Roman period and becomes there's a later medieval abbey established there. So they're trying to show a site in the Gallic. I mean, it's again. I mean, look at the countryside. I mean, it looks like it's central Italy. I know
I,
France is beautiful, but this is for me. This looks a little too Mediterranean for my personal. But I think what's really
I
cool
thought
about
that too.
this, yeah, they're showing. What I love about it is they're showing a old ruin, sacred site, a deep antiquity. Again, the landscape doesn't quite, it's somewhere. It's difficult to put your finger on what's wrong with it, but it's kind of,
Too green.
but
Too sunny.
it's too sunny. The whole of the 9th century was cloudy. No, I mean it was the Dark Ages for crying out loud. They didn't have any light. I'm joking, folks, but no,
But
I
no,
like
when
the
you
fact
think
they've.
of those areas, though, you do think of more of a more cloudy, more wet area than what
So I suppose
this
they've got an Arcadian
constantly
landscape
depicts.
aside. The idea of ruins in the French countryside is a great sort of evocation, and likewise the Church of Saint Genevieve. I like
Yes,
that.
yes, that is number 9. Now, this is a real place, right?
Yeah. So this is down. I don't know which Saint Genevieve because there's quite a lot of Saint Genevieve churches. But if this is in Paris itself, or
Yes.
is this supposed to be in Paris or near Paris, or which one is this? The
I
Abbey of Saint Genevieve,
It's the
monastery in
church.
Paris.
It's the church. It's the one in Paris. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a real place. How it exactly looked, again, they seem to be going for this, tower attached to the nave, and
So
it's
again, a
looking.
couple of 100 years ahead of where they should be.
Maybe I'm not so confident on my Frankish architecture, but it just seems a bit too tall, a bit too, but But hey, I'll let it slide because I don't know enough to criticise it. But I'm a little cynical about some of the details there. But I like again. They're giving this sense of age that there's moss on the roof, that there's a sense of
Yes.
antiquity, that you could be looking at a 400-500-year-old structure here. I like that you are looking at a church that may have been seen. It may have seen King Clovis there in the early 6th century. That there was a church there where Clovis was buried. You've got that sense that here we are 400 years or 380 years later, and you're seeing an old site that has a antiquity going back the very end of the Roman era and the beginning of the Frankish presence in the area. So I kind of, again, details don't matter. It's more about, is the aesthetic right? Yes, actually, frankly, it is. You've got
It is.
walls around the town, around the city. You've got a church that has royal burials in it. You've got that sense of, yeah, it's giving the right vibe, Jono. That's the key thing, isn't it?
That's the key thing. That is the key thing. And it also gives you a bigger picture of like human history has been building for a long time.
I like the first floor, equivalent first floor balcony, which is almost
Yes.
like, and we do see that in some late Anglo-Saxon churches mimicking Carolingian style. So I do think they may have, someone who knows what they're talking about more than I do has been advising them on this. That's all I'll
Now they
say.
do use, I know they use archaeologists in their recreations.
Aha.
They do. I do know that. Like they
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
team of archaeologists that they use in their
Yeah, I
recreations and
mean,
things.
as I said before, it's not that it's all wrong. It's about, there's choices here that lead to aesthetics that may not be intended, even if it's accurate. Or there's gaps, even though it's accurate. There's whole areas that you think, well, but why isn't this there? Or what? Yeah. So likewise with Miletus, I don't know what this is supposed to be. Can you remember from the video game what this is
So
supposed to be?
it's just a military camp.
So, well, they've obviously again got this idea of old Roman ruins that have been adapted with wooden architecture.
Yes, that's exactly what it is
Yeah, yeah, that's
in
the
the
idea.
game.
Again, I would have to again make the point. I was joking earlier, but here, in all seriousness, where's the freaking ditch? What's the point in building all that architect? That why refortify it? Oh, because again, video games, everything's on bedrock. So I mean, but even a rock cut ditch, we have early medieval rock cut ditches at Tintagel. We have early medieval rock cut ditches around many fortified sites. They were reusing Iron Age hill
Yeah, it
forts. They
wasn't. I
knew how.
mean, they'd been
That's
cutting
big
rocks
ditches.
for thousands of years at this point. Like this is not.
So this is both fine, and it shows a site reused, repurposed from a Roman fort. And another level, it's what the heck were you thinking? And if you are going to fortify a new gateway, why not actually build a palisade to protect those figures standing on the top of a pile of rubble? So there's things that practically one could be a bit pedantic about, but otherwise it's quite evocative. That idea of ancient places, I like that very much.
But would in a more simplistic idea of this, would the English or whoever is in the area, would they have taken some of these old sites
Yes.
and reused them?
Yes, of course, and so, yes, absolutely. So that fits in very nicely. I
Okay,
think I agree with that.
so they're showing you in general the repurposing
Yeah, yeah.
of how
That's what
these
they're.
structures over time have been reused.
I think
And
that's something really good. Yeah, they're showing
yeah,
ancient sites that are repurposed, and I think that's really important. You're getting a
because that
sense of a deep time
is
landscape. And like Middle
yes.
Earth, we're used to this now because we, even in our fantasy literature, we expect that immersive experience of a deep time landscape with old ruins. We're so used to that from our fantasy worlds that it'd be crazy if they're showing an actual historical landscape not to try that. And it's simplified and it's sometimes perhaps a bit misleading, but it's good they've put the effort in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Now, image number 11. This is the boundary of what would become Ireland. It is still a Pictish camp, though we are in the year 870.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, yeah. Okay. So
Maybe the
um,
remnants of them.
I mean, it
Maybe.
looks all very Norse to me. You've got a Trelleborg style hall and the back on the highest point. I mean, I
See,
think we
and I
were.
think this is what it's trying to show. I think what this image in the game is trying to show was the merging of the Vikings and Picts
It's
and
showing
the
that.
influence on each other, and because that did happen,
Yes, of
like
course.
it wasn't just war and blood. The Vikings and Picts very much intermingled.
So you've got this massive 12th century stave church tile pagan temple. Is that supposed to be on the
Yeah,
highest point there? I love that. I mean, that's.
right
I
beside
mean,
a
very.
longhouse.
Yeah, very. I mean, but the idea. I think what they're trying to do is show a elite compound within the town with a cult building and a hall. I think that's what they're
Hmm.
trying to show there. And we have that from 10th century sites like Tisu in Denmark, which has earlier stages to it. So I think that's what they're playing with there. And
Yeah.
they've got fortifications. You've got trees. It's not like absolutely packed. You've got sort of I would say that the buildings are a little spread out. I would have expected a little bit more sort of crammed in structures.
They were more
I
on
think,
top of each other.
okay, yeah. But otherwise, I think it gives a good aesthetic. I would also point out that I think you've got the long ships in the foreground pulled up. You've got jetties, you've got
Yes.
bridges, you've got a working commercial and landscape, as well as the elite, the fortifications, the elite buildings. What I would query is this whole idea of the elite would want to be in the town itself. I think they probably want to be inland a little bit, away from potential raids. But that's a whole other debate. But otherwise, I think that's quite good.
And that's probably also because a lot of these places you're raiding, and they don't want you to have to run 30 minutes to get to a house.
Yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a boring part of the game. But I do kind of like the idea where they're showing the merging of those two cultures through imagery.
Yes, yes. I think you. I mean, I would. I'm a bit pressed to pick if this is supposed to be an island or Pickland. What are the native elements? But it does look very Scandinavian. But I think the point is you're looking at a world in these market centers. These would have been slave markets. They would have been
Yes,
places where a range of different ethnic groups and traders would meet. They wouldn't have been look Scandinavian. So I think the fact they're showing a mixture of different architectural styles is only a healthy thing. Although it's all very rocky again, isn't it? It's like no one's actually been to Ireland or.
right.
I'm sorry, I'm being mean, but
No, you're right.
that
You're very
it all
much
looks
right.
very Mediterranean or Californian to me.
It does. It does. Yeah, you're very much right. It's very tropical, if you will. But the one thing I appreciated about that image was it acknowledging the merging of cultures and it not just depicting them as enemies.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I mean, if I can be critical of all of these scenes, where are the animals? I mean, you
Right.
see some people. I mean, these are
Oh,
spaces that would.
there is when you're walking around the streets, there is pig farms, there's cattle farms, there's
Okay,
grain farms, there's
chickens and geese, lots of
yeah,
chickens.
yeah, chickens running
Oh,
around in
okay,
the streets and
fish drying. I don't know.
yes, you can catch fish and take them and sell them at the market.
Okay, as long as there's those elements, otherwise it's I do worry about how much these just look like places where humans came and consumed animals, but the animals. I mean, another bias of these programs are these games, at least in the gameplay I've seen, is there's not enough kids. There's just like one or two token kids. The
Oh no,
population.
this game is full of kids. Like you
Okay, good.
interact with kids.
Oh,
You
I
have
don't know about that.
stories where kids where their parents die and you know
Okay,
you retrieve this kind of like fancy artifact for them so they can survive.
well that's good.
It shows a ton of orphans.
Showing my limitations of the gameplay, I take it. I
No,
take
no,
it
no.
back.
Well, we said you never played it,
Exactly. That's
and so they do show a lot of that kind of stuff. Like this, there's one scene where it's like, oh, my dad was killed in a war. My mom died of a flu. Like it's very common for a kid
yeah, yeah.
in that time. And so you give them money and say, get on this boat and go see your aunt at this place, and she'll take care of you. Um, so going on to number 12. Now you can get these fantasy swords and fantasy weapons and things like that. And Vikings, to my knowledge, didn't really use swords. It was the axe and shield. And
Uh,
so
no, they use swords as well.
did they use swords? Was it just
Yeah,
not
yeah,
as
we've got lots
common?
of swords. No, they would have been high status prestige weapons, but yeah,
Okay.
axe is more common. But we also have some axes that are inlaid with yellow and silver and would have been ceremonial or high status objects too. So this is a
So
fantasy object. It fits very much our aesthetics of Vikings, but
so image
it's
12.
trying to yeah it's trying to evoke the idea of some of the objects we have from the Viking Age, including the 10th century axe from Mammon, which clearly is an object, a gift from a king, perhaps Harold Bluetooth, to one of his retainers as a symbol of office, of rank. So the idea of having decorated blades of axes and swords is not stupid, it's not ridiculous, but the particular designs picked here very much are inspired by post-medieval magical staves, such as the Aegishammer, which is an Icelandic stave that's probably taking its inspiration from Christian and Judaic Kabbalistic symbols that are nothing to do with Norse paganism. So the art on this looks like something from the 18th or early 19th century, and it's
Okay.
part of our aesthetic of Norse paganism, but it's got absolutely bugger all to do with the Viking Age art. Viking Age art was often zoomorphic, in other words, animals,
Yeah.
and the art we have on metalwork would have been rich and varied, and animals and mythological beasts and humans. Not this kind of this fits our aesthetic of what something cool and kind of pagany looks like, but
This
it's
almost
absolutely
looks
nothing to.
Pictish. Like the
Yeah.
symbols almost looks Pictish if you
Well,
look at it.
if you look up the Aegishammer, which is the helm of Or, which is a it's found in a occult symbol that's now associated with Norse mythology, Norse paganism, but is only known from post medieval texts. There's a lot of leaps of inference to get it back to the Viking Age
Mhm.
via attempts to link it to. The name is linked to the Volsunga saga, and the a reference to Sigurd takes it from
Sigurd is your
Fafnir.
brother. Sigurd is your brother, by the way.
Yeah. So there's but you have to make lots of inferential jumps to get it back to the Viking Age. And so while I'm not saying there was ever objects like this is very much our aesthetic again. This is what we want Vikings to be wielding. And as for
But
the
as far
yeah,
if you take off the imagery and you just have a wrapped wooden handle with that shape of axe, would that be accurate?
I don't know why you'd have a double axe. I mean, I don't think they did that, did they really? If you had
Okay.
just a one-sided axe,
I mean,
a
I
bearded
understand
axe.
why you have a double axe because you swing this way and then come back the same. It makes
Do
things
you?
more
Do
simple.
you? Or do you just do that
I
because
mean,
that's actually
either way.
okay. Well, all I'll say is we have plenty of axes that are not double-sided, and we have plenty of axes that are bearded in that way. They have that drop, and that would be not outrageous if you got rid of the decoration, you got
In the
rid of the
back.
the back, and
Yeah.
you would have a hafted axe. Then I'm not objecting.
Okay. So that's what more would have looked like.
Yeah, yeah, very utilitarian objects. Yes. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And they would have mostly just carried a wooden shield, I'm guessing.
Yeah, you'd have a very light wooden shield, and the reanalysis of the shields from Gokstad, if they're representative, show us that shields in all our reconstructions are way too hefty. They would have been
Yeah, and
very light.
I should have put the shield on here because you can carry a shield if you want to, and it is
Yeah.
very light. It goes on
Okay.
just one arm. It's
Yeah.
leather
Round
strapped. It's
shield.
made of wood, and it
Yeah.
has the Raven picture on it painted.
Of course it does.
But it's got a metal ring that goes
But they
around
may
it.
have painted them, and they may have put leather covers on, which they painted.
Yeah,
There's all sorts of the decorative shields are not an outrageous idea. I like
it's
that.
not crazy. But
Right.
it definitely the shields that is meant to be used that you're meant to like play the game with and not all the fanciful Asgard stuff that you can
Yeah.
bring
Yeah.
in are very light.
Yeah. Very light and
You
simple.
can
Very
use
practical.
you can use a very an axe like that. You also have the single front axe, and then you have a few options for sword. Without bringing in the Asgard stuff, you can bring in flaming Asgard swords and Pegasus, the horse with wings, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
13, Ravensthorpe, England. This
Okay.
is the picture of the
Oh, it's lovely,
founding.
isn't it? It
Oh
looks
yeah,
like
it's
climate
nice.
change, doesn't it?
So
It's like it's like
it's so
it's like
white.
everything's better. It's like, yeah, it's very very Moana, isn't it? It feels
Yeah.
like away away. We're gonna, it's lovely. You can imagine.
Where's
I
the
want to live there.
pineapples?
Yeah, yeah. And we'll never leave. I love it. I love it. It's lovely. I'd love to live there. Let me think about the details here. Right. Okay. So what they've done is they've got a strand, and then they've made up a massive jetties. Okay. So there's a number of issues here with the way this is represented. That we do have evidence that at the bigger trading sites. In the Viking Age, for bigger cargo vessels, the number of vessels meant they were actually building up hards with jetties at Birka, Hedeby, Kaupang, proper hives, so that you can load and unload ships. So I'm not
Now
doubting that is all
on the
good.
left hand corner bottom of that image, there's that building sitting on the dock.
Yeah, I don't know what that's. Is that for a trading
No, that
house
is
or
the
merchant's
ship.
house?
That's where the shipbuilder lives. And so behind that is where you would see what you're talking about.
What am I talking about? Sorry, what do you mean?
So the bigger ship buildings and the bigger like the
Oh, sorry.
so and on past like the bottom left hand corner of that image is where you would see that kind of
Okay,
setting.
so you've got ship repair, shipbuilding.
Hmm.
You've got actually a proper you've got a proper trading area. I don't see it. I mean, I suppose criticism. There's no defences. I suppose that would be
There's
kind of
not.
no.
There's
You'd
no
kind of
defenses. The river is your
want
defense.
you'd have some kind of palisade or some kind of ditch. Ditch again. It's all just like an open, weird landscape. You've got massive. Their obsession with having massive trees growing right in the middle of your settlement is a bit weird. But everyone's each their own. I mean, that was just it seemed like a bit of a. I mean, if you're living in a wooden building, Jono, you wouldn't want a massive old tree. I mean, like the second it gets windy, well, your house is going.
You're gone. Yeah.
It's not. That is one of the constants of human history, from Florida today to if you've got a lovely, massive, big tree you're proud of that's going to romantically drape its branches over your house, then
It's
you're
eventually going to
stuffed.
break your house.
You're stuffed. So yeah, I mean but it's lovely. It looks nice, doesn't it? And I
It
like
looks
the big
and
trelleborg style hall, and they've got a bit of Roman temple columns just sitting there. I don't know why, but why not? Because there would have been
well on the
Roman
back
ruins.
side of it there's Roman ruins.
Ooh. So it's the idea it's a Roman villa estate that has been adapted, and in with 400 years after the collapse of Roman Britain, 450 years,
Yes.
460 years. So yeah, it's become a timber settlement. Don't know. I don't have anything else critical to say here, other than that I think a lot of that timber work on the front jetties is surplus to requirements. I don't know why they need all of that. It looks like a lot of
Gotcha.
timber. I mean, why the jetty is quite so wide. How much do you need? It looks all a bit like people put a lot of effort into creating a lot of. But apart from being a pedantic git, it looks really good. Yeah.
Cool. And now the real place, what is its connection? And then we have two more images and we'll call it a wrap. But the real town, what connections do they actually have with Vikings?
I don't know off the top of my head, and as I said earlier, I suspect it's just the place name provides a
Just the place name.
iconic connection. But I'll have to check that up. But I don't know off the top of my head. But I think it's just a sounds kind of Viking-y, and so we're going to use it.
Now, I did look at the town up, and the way they laid it out, as far as the way the river cuts by and things like that, is pretty accurate as far as that goes. Now, it's nowhere near as Hawaii looking, but it
Yeah,
is quite.
I don't. I've never visited. I didn't know it was on any major watercourse at all. To be honest with you, other than it has a reservoir near it, I didn't know that it was on any major. It seems reasonably. But
Well, it's
anyway,
not a big river. From the game, it's not very wide. It might even be just a very big creek.
I mean, you're quite a way north of Northampton, and Northampton is. I mean, I wonder if what they're trying to do is to represent Northampton in this period, which is on the River Nen, and would have been a important late Saxon trading site. So I wonder if they're trying to evoke that by using the local. I've done some TikTok videos of Northampton quite recently, actually. I wonder if that's what they're trying to evoke. But I
Maybe,
don't know.
maybe, absolutely. And then image number 14. This
God.
This is how Ivar the Wolf Kiss looks in
Right.
general with no
Okay.
fanciful. This is what you walk around with if you don't Asgard it up.
You don't Asgard it up. So this is the
Yes. This is the played down version of him.
this is the play down version.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, with his rubbish tattoo. Why would he? Yeah. So he's got the side tattoos with the shaved side. This is very much inspired by the TV show Vikings seasons 1 to 3. This is absolutely straight. This is like he's got some lovely braided red interlace on his sleeve. I like that. What's all the fur doing? I don't know. What is that brooch supposedly? What are those brooches supposedly doing? I mean, he's got a silver buckle brooch because he's got his back scabbard. That's no, okay. And the hair. I mean, we talked about the yeah. I mean, it's very much our era, isn't it? It's very 1998 to 2010. It's like it looks very looks very noughties, early teens of our century, I suppose. Late 90s to early teens. It's very much our era. I don't
Yeah,
know what else I can say. It feels out of date already. I know this game isn't that old. It's only about 5 years old, isn't it? For me, it feels retro in not a good way, in my opinion. But I can't say anything else other than, I mean, if this is what people think Viking warriors look like, good luck, because I don't think they would have had the tattoos. I don't think they would have had the hairstyle like that. There's no historical evidence of that kind of hairstyle. I don't know why people think that.
especially being from a cold area,
Yeah.
it it wouldn't make sense to have the side of your head shaved. You would want as
They
much
may have
hair as
shaved the
possible.
back, but
Yeah.
we've got all. I don't know. I mean, it looks incredible. It looks like I don't think they. No further comment.
It's not well thought through. All right, now the grand finale,
Okay, we're going to do
Hadrian's
the
Wall.
Hadrian's Wall. Here, I've got this image up now. Okay, this is in winter, and again, somehow, even though it's snowy, it still feels like it's like Italy. I don't know how they manage it. I don't know how they managed to make it look so sunny and inviting and that beautiful coastline. I don't know which
It's
coast that
bizarre.
is. I mean, where's it supposed to be? I mean,
I'm
Hadrian's
not.
Wall's going where here? Is this going to the
This
North Sea or
this is
the?
going to the north. This is the north. This is the very
I
north.
mean,
It would
I'll just.
be. Hold on. Let me.
And so you got the Tyne on the right there, and this is supposedly dropping down to Wall's End, and it's all very I like the fact you got all the. Therefore, if you're looking east to the North Sea, then you got all the trees because no one lives to the north because it's like the land of the wild. And
Yes.
I mean, it's all a bit embarrassing, isn't it? I suppose positive thing. I mean, the wall's too wide, in my opinion, but it's got you've got a mile castle there. You've got I don't know what that is in the foreground. What on earth that could possibly be?
So this is in Northumbria. That's where this would be located.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have to ask the question: where is the northern ditch? Didn't they? You can still see it today. So didn't they? If you can still see it today, did they just not miraculously have a ditch?
That was my first thought because the like
Where's
I,
the Roman road and Vallum? Where's Staingate behind? Where's the massive ditch that defended the road? Well, they've thought about Hadrian's Wall as far as thinking about the wall. They haven't thought about the military infrastructure because the Vallum is a freaking huge pit. It doesn't survive everywhere, but the Vallum is a huge defensive line behind that is twice, the width or three times the depth of the wall. I mean, a big, that would have defended the road from the south. So you're creating a
yeah.
military corridor. And these are features that survive. So again, my first point is they've thought about the survival of the wall as a relic of the landscape, but they haven't thought about the vallum and the road. Then about the wall, they haven't thought about the ditch. And about the wall itself, I think they've made it probably too short and too deep. So it needs to be taller and narrower. But that's just I mean, if anyone who's walked Hadrian's Wall, it's heavily reconsolidated, but even at its most monumental proportions, it's not. That looks like the Great Wall of China. I think you said this to me
That's
beforehand.
yeah,
They've
yeah.
thought someone just designed this, getting confused over which wall they're trying to reconstruct. It looks
I
like
th-
the Ming Dynasty, post medieval.
it does.
It looks
It does.
Great Wall of China. So they obviously, again, is this conscious or is this we have to make it look old and grand like the Great Wall of China, or people won't believe it's Hadrian's Wall? Is that what is our modern desires, our modern aesthetics?
And
So
then
that's my take.
and I would say that, it's one of the lesser apart from us, like who are that wall is not often, until recently talked about.
I have to say one. Can I interrupt you with one
Yeah,
positive
yeah.
thing? The Last Kingdom shows Hadrian's Wall completely in
Yes.
the wrong topographical situation, looking uphill. At least this has the wall going along the top of a ridge, so that it
They had
has
it looking
views to
uphill.
the
I've
north.
never watched The Last Kingdom.
It's too much wailing music for my liking, but it's got some good bits. But they have this bit where we're going to walk along Hadrian's Wall, and they sort of go and they have the wailing, hey, 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 and it's going, and you go, oh god, and then I'm going, hang on, You only see it for a few seconds, but that wall looks like it was built like on Skull Island to keep King Kong out, and it's
Yeah.
not at the top of a hill, so it's looking up at dead ground. So, and that does happen in places on Offa's Dyke and elsewhere where it's trying to compromise. But no, this, at least topographically, they thought of this. But then, anyway, I'll stop there.
And this is
But I
where
think
this area is where you
they've
really run
tried.
into the pick. Like this area, like you run
Pigs
into
weren't anywhere
like
near Hadrian's Wall.
this is where you run into them. Like one of the first people when you get to Northumbria and you go on to Hadrian's Wall, there's a one-armed Pictish warrior that asks you to send him off to his other world for one final battle.
See, that is problematic, because I'm going from your characterization, because Hadrian's Wall was at the heart of the Northumbrian kingdom, right? Therefore, from the earliest iteration of the Northumbrian kingdom in the 6th century, Hadrian's Wall was deep in Anglian territory, in the territory
Hmm.
settled by Germanic-speaking peoples. Hadrian's Wall was not on the edge of anything in the early Middle Ages, right? It was on the edge of a contrived Roman frontier that split up peoples of the same linguistic and cultural background, and never was meaningful. The whole point is, it was never a natural barrier. It was never a natural. So the idea that
It was a meeting place, am I not
yeah,
right?
the idea that you'd go there and you'd feel like you were on the edge in the 9th century, that we're getting into the territory of the Picts. This is modern ethno-nationalism. This is Scottish English Hadrian's Wall. That's just bullshit. It's just that this is more the modern spin. So I'm just trying to, I'm over egging it a bit there by saying it's bullshit. It's not bullshit, but it's misunderstanding completely the political geography of 9th century Britain to see Hadrian's Wall sitting on an edge. It's absolutely at the centre of some of the major monasteries, royal land of the Northumbrians. There's no way you'd be meeting a wandering Pict with one arm or two arms or any other arms. Just ranting, sorry.
When did the Picts officially vanish?
Well, the
Well,
Picts
not that
did,
they vanished. They
yeah,
bred,
yeah.
you know,
The
they,
Picts
they
are the
got a,
people of, yeah, so
yes.
that we don't know exactly when their language died out, because they did speak a Brythonic language like Cumbric, like Welsh, like Cornish, and they became absorbed into, they became increasingly Gallicised by Gallic speakers from the west coast through the 8th and 9th centuries, and they became increasingly Norsified, if that's a word, Scandinavian influenced in the Northern Isles and the Western Isles, and Caithness and Sutherland. And so the Picts didn't die out as a people, they simply were
They,
integrated culturally with the emerging kingdom of Scotland and with the Scandinavian settled areas. But what the Picts weren't is anywhere in southern Scotland. There were Welsh speaking peoples, there were Brythonic speaking peoples in southern Scotland. Anywhere from Clackmannanshire down to modern day Berwick and that area of Northumbria, what is now the Scottish English border, would have been Welsh speaking. They wouldn't have been Pictish
right.
at all. So this is, again, if I can get on my Welsh high horse, this is the writing out of the Welsh out of British history, you see, because the Welsh are often misunderstood as simply living in Wales. But the idea is that Wales today, and since the 16th century, is the rump of a larger territory. And large parts of northern Britain, right up into what is now central Scotland, and right the way down to Yorkshire and across to Cumbria, is the land. Cumbria means the land of the Cymry, the land of the people. This is the Welsh.
Right.
The Cumbrians and Cymry, as in Wales, have the same etymological root. They're the people, the men. That's the lads. That's what it means. Is the land of the people. And so, in understanding the political geography of early medieval Britain, the last kingdom actually recognises a kingdom of Cumbria, but they give it to a Danish actor who portrays him with a English accent, and it's just like, anyway, it doesn't matter. But they don't really understand the Welsh. Everyone has a vague idea that the Picts are kind of proto-Scots in some vague Celtic-y way, but they completely ignore. Although the final Last Kingdom film does have a couple of Welsh kings appear, the Cumbrian king and a Welsh king appear, has Hawddar, and who appears in season 3, he comes back in season 5, and yeah, he appears, and then you have a king of the Cumbrians appear, Owain. But you really don't get a sense of that because we can't understand that in Britain today. And from an American perspective, when you think of the island of Britain, you'll think of Scotland, Wales, and England. You don't think of an early medieval geography where in northern Britain there were Gaelic speakers, Pictish speakers, Welsh speakers, English speakers, Latin speakers, and probably Greek speakers as well,
Yeah.
as well as Norse speakers. So, you've got a much more mixed up picture.
Very good. That's what I wanted to do is to bring clarity, and I think we'll take a look at some standing stone at
Well,
other
I'd love to
time.
do that.
That will be
Can we do a part two where you take me around the ancient monuments? Because I know that they put in the Stiper stones, one of the
yes,
stone circles. I'd love to see those because I haven't visited them all, but I'd love to see how they show the prehistoric monuments.
absolutely. I can take the bird and I can fly over them and get
Because you're a
nice
bird as
shots.
well,
You can fly as a raven.
just like it was back in the day.
Yep, just like
Are
it
you
was.
going by horse? No, I'm taking a raven.
Well, you can see through the eyes of the raven. That's the
Oh, yeah.
idea. And
I mean,
so,
I love this mixing up of mythology and history
yes,
and science fiction. But I have to say, as a point, I don't know if we want to go into it in massive depth, but I have to say, though it is obviously fiction, one of the sketchiest things about all these fictional worlds is this idea that genetic memory is a thing and that through DNA, you can actually reconstruct memories. This is more than
nonsense.
any of the reconstructions, this is probably one of the most racially problematic things that you can advocate for in
Right.
modern society. So when people fixate, and rightly so, on the representation of people of color and the representation of white people, I always try to warn people that is important, but perhaps one of the more dodgy things about our modern fiction is how many objects are thought to preserve the memories of dead people, how much DNA you can reconstruct past minds. And I know it's fiction, and if you treat it as fiction, it's fine. But those ideas do have deep, sketchy pasts and ongoing misuses that we need to be aware of. So while it's fun, it can lead into all manner of weird territory.
That is indeed true. All right. Well, we'll
Thank you.
wrap up with that and
Thank
we'll
you.
schedule a part two. We got to let this upload. Yours has been on 78% for a minute, and so it's kind of got me scared.
Yeah, yeah. Are you happy with that, or was I too waffly?
No, 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 no. That was great. That was
Cool. I don't know
absolutely
enough
great.
about Ravensthorpe. I'm gonna have to look that. I think they're trying to represent Northampton. So if you want to edit me down a bit where I babble, feel free. I don't mind. If you just want
No,
me
it's
to
okay.
cut to this.
And we can retouch that next time as well. As like, hey, we did a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
research. If you don't
yeah,
know, find out.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected on anything because I can't know it all. If there's somebody who actually consulted on this, goes, I saw your podcast and you say this, and actually it's this. I go, cool, that's good.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
I
And then
didn't
we
know.
bring that
Yeah,
information to everybody else. All right. I'm going to hit stop and we'll let this upload real quick. Everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. Follow Professor Howard Williams on TikTok while we still got it as Archaeodeath, but also he is Archaeodeath on Facebook. But on Threads and other places, he is just Howard
Instagram.
Williams.
Yeah, I can't remember what I am, but I'm around. I'm at various
Yep.
places doing various things.
You're
Thank you so
everywhere.
much, Jono. It's been great.
No problem.